Good evening, everybody. Elena Barbera here. Welcome to the Base Mother Show. Jimmy Kimmel, he's the man of the hour. He's under fire for a divisive lie he told on his Monday night show. That fact is undeniable. Now the country's in an uproar over him being benched from his show. Question is the government shutting down free speech, or is Jimmy Kimmel's firing a result of the free market forces that we live in? I admit that I started preparing for this episode from a defensive position. I am so sick of Democrats for showing such dark and evil responses, such contempt for Charlie Kirk. Responses to the murder were appalling. Kimmel was just one of many. That stands. I am horrified by anyone who celebrated or made fun of Charlie and his wife, Erika. I'm disgusted by everyone who said things like, no one deserves to die, but he was a horrible person and a racist and a fascist. There are no buts about it. It's just gross and disappointing to see that how many tens of thousands of people we live amongst who are like this. And I know this is about Kimmel, but just to prove the point, I have to show you a clip from last night in Boston. This was a protester who showed up at the vigil for Charlie Kirk. Only an animal would act like that. Tear up an American flag, shove it down the crack of your butt, and then toss it back at people who are mourning. So if I've got a chip on my shoulder when it comes to the Democrats, I hope that explains why, because that's only one of tens of thousands of posts and videos that are out there that are appalling. Anyway, the argument over whether or not Jimmy Kimmel's cancellation poses a First Amendment threat at first had me thinking that this was no rights infringement at all. It was, in my opinion, a simple case of the free market speaking, a business decision to nix Kimmel based on bad ratings, which he has, and public backlash that would affect advertising revenue, which is real. After spending today digging around, I still believe that this was a business decision, but I've also seen that there's more to the story, and I wouldn't be honest if I didn't take all of it into consideration and at least share some of the things that I came across. So tonight I'm going to go through a timeline of events and bring up some facts that haven't quite hit the social media arguments just yet. If there's anything I get wrong by error or omission, please drop it in the comments and I will look into it after the show. Okay, so we are starting out with December 15th, 1791. Now, don't get scared. It's not going to take us all night here to get through this timeline, but we do have to start on the day that the Bill of Rights was ratified. I could go further back, but you're welcome. I'm only going to 1791. Bill of Rights ratified. This is your First Amendment if you're American. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. So note the language there in the middle that we have the freedom of speech and freedom of the press. Now, the argument in favor of Jimmy Kimmel saying that his free speech rights are being violated is that he's just a comedian and he can just say whatever he wants. Well, jokes about murder, like, sure, you can say whatever you want, Jimmy, but there are going to be consequences. You have a job. Your job is entertain, not offend and appall. But anyway, this is some old school Jimmy Kimmel comedy that I personally was never a big fan of, but it did make him famous. Check this out.
I mean, do you think that she's attractive or not?
pretending to harass a woman and, molest her from behind when she's not paying attention. Ha ha. I think that was when he was on the Man Show with Adam Carolla. Dumb boy comedy. I don't care. I'm not offended nor do I enjoy it. But from he moved very, very far away from that, completely forgetting his roots. And completely being forgiven by the feminists for the way he treated women on his show, because that was not like a singular skit in which he treated women like objects. I mean, it was just the whole show was about that. He moved far down toward current events, political commentary, and in his comedy, he said things like this about his fellow Americans.
Get any more overcrowded, they're going to have to make some very tough choices about who gets an ICU bed. That choice doesn't seem so tough to me. Vaccinated person having a heart attack? Yes, come right on in. We'll take care of you. Unvaccinated guy who gobbled horse goo? Rest in peace, Wheezy.
So Jimmy isn't exactly Mr. Compassion anyway, right? So let's sorry, I'm having technical stuff. He isn't exactly the most compassionate guy on TV. But, he's a comedian, so he can be mean to people, right? We have to take into consideration, is he designated as press and should he be held to the same standards as the press? Or is he just, like some entertaining tap dancing comedian? He really has commented on a lot of current events. He celebrated when Tucker Carlson got removed from Fox News. He very openly celebrated when Trump was silenced and removed from all social media platforms. You might remember that. Anyway, the idea of who Jimmy is and how the FCC rules and regulations will apply to him isn't something I'm going to get into in depth tonight, but I think it's worth sticking a pin in. And I think it's because it may come up in the conversations around what you can and cannot say in a broadcast. Because when we get past the very simple, it's free speech amendment, First Amendment violation, or no, it's not. Like there are a lot of really juvenile, like 6th grade level conversations going on in the internet. And hopefully we can advance that and have more nuanced conversations about things like this, about which rules apply to him and how they apply and what punishments apply, if any, from the government. All right, we're going to fast forward. Let's come back to the 21st century here. We're going to go to September 10th, 2025 at 12:33 p.m. That was the moment when Charlie Kirk was assassinated by Tyler Robinson. Immediately, conspiracy theories, fake news, some real news, and opinions started flying around. One of the fake images that was created was a photoshopped image of the shooter wearing a Trump shirt, because they were trying to frame him as a MAGA guy. A Republican killed Charlie Kirk was the fake story. It was quickly debunked, but I am personally still seeing people online who are saying that Charlie Kirk was killed by a Republican. 5 days later, though, I guess Jimmy Kimmel had not gotten that memo. So at around 11:40 p.m. on Monday, September 15th, Jimmy Kimmel, during his opening monologue, he made the claim that it was a MAGA individual who killed Charlie Kirk. And I'm going to play, this clip for you directly from his monologue.
Lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them, and doing everything they can to score political points from it.
Yeah, so people like us, me, are trying to pretend that it wasn't a MAGA person, when we know fully well, yes, that the boy, Tyler Robinson, or a young man, he's 22 years old, fully responsible for his actions, that he was part of a more conservative family, and he turned hard left away from his family, moved in with a man who thinks thinks he can transition into a woman, and who might also be a furry, was totally into like furry sex video games and all this crazy stuff. Yeah, no, sorry, that's not MAGA. None of that's MAGA. His family, by all accounts, and his friends said that he hated Charlie Kirk, and said that he hated conservatives and he had taken far left views. So for Kimmel to promote such a lie and defame half the country, more than half the country, was absolutely disgraceful. And it just really shows the level of his character, as if the clip about COVID, which had complete lack of compassion for people who were unvaccinated and just said they should die. Like it's consistent, his lack of compassion, but it's still just as skeevy and gross to me. And I never get quite past how much this man has fallen from whatever grace he may have had at any point in the past. Whew. By the morning, though, Tuesday, September 16th, the blowback hit. That clip that I just showed you was flying around the internet. There was public outcry. People were calling him a liar, rightfully so, because he flat out lied. He wasn't making a joke. He was wrapping a lie in what he considered to be a funny, and again, arguing, making jokes about murder. So then Wednesday, September 17th rolls around. This is Wednesday morning, and a lot happens in the timeline on this day. This is the crux of the controversy, everything that happened between 10 a.m. and about, 7 or 8 p.m. So at around 11:35 a.m. on Wednesday morning, in the middle of Benny Johnson's podcast, he's a political commentator, journalist. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but he's pretty big. He was interviewing Brendan Carr, the head of the FCC. And of course, this all came up, right? What else was anybody else talking about except how gross Jimmy Kimmel is? And here's a snippet from their conversation that has become the left's rallying cry when they say that the government is oppressing free speech in America.
People don't understand is that the broadcasters, and you've gotten this right, are entirely different than people that use other forms of communication. They have a license granted by us at the FCC, and that comes with it an obligation to operate in the public interest. And we can get into some ways that we've been trying to reinvigorate the public interest and some changes that we've seen. But frankly, when you see stuff like this, I mean, look, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. These companies can find ways to change conduct, to take action, frankly, on Kimmel, or there's going to be additional work for the FCC ahead.
All right, so we can do this the easy way or the hard way. That is what is being taken as a threat. Do this easy way or the hard way, like he's some bouncer trying to get people out of a bar. So I recommend that you listen to that entire conversation. If you're watching on YouTube or Rumble, it is linked in the description, and I wrote down the timestamp so that you can find it easily. When you're talking about the hard way, it's looking at all of the FCC rules and seeing what may or may not have been violated. It doesn't mean that he's strong arming Jimmy Kimmel, because they cannot operate outside of the limits of the law. You can't just force someone off the air if they haven't violated their license. That's not how it works, and it's not going to happen that way. So calm down and stop saying that Donald Trump is going after his political appointments. It's just referring to accountability, to making sure that the broadcasters, the stations, that the programming itself, that everybody is staying within the limits of the license that they were granted. That's reasonable. When he says we can do this the easy way, I think he just means that these broadcasters and the network can do the right thing and provide programming that isn't completely devoid of humanity and decency and isn't hostile to half the nation and the communities in which they broadcast, because that is exactly what that commentary from Jimmy was. It was hostile to half the nation. So it did need to be dealt with. Sorry, Jimmy. I'm really not on your side here at all. Now, that was 11:30 in the morning. During the day that day, a lot happened. I'm going to read to you excerpts from a Hollywood Reporter article, which is something I have never said before in my life. So, within hours, multiple ABC station owners held calls with senior Disney leadership expressing their concern with the comments, a second source says. Now, Disney owns ABC, just in case you didn't catch that yet in all the this flurry. Inside of ABC, multiple conversations with Kimmel were had at the executive level. The first person says, though the talks had not yet reached Iger or TV head Dana Walden, the execs wanted to know, how was Kimmel going to address the situation on Wednesday night's show? The answer was not satisfactory to management, sources say. Meanwhile, the advertiser calls began to roll in, and then big affiliate conglomerates Nexstar and Sinclair threatened to preempt the show. So you've got the FCC, and then you've got these big, conglomerates that own all these TV stations around the country. And then the network, ABC, broadcasts through those conglomerates. So there are multiple layers here of how a TV show gets put out and into our living rooms. Second source says that the blowback was snowballing enough that ABC had ABC not acted, Kimmel's show would have been dark in a large swath of the country, even beyond the Sinclair and Nexstar territories. So also note that above, they said the advertiser calls were coming in. It's not just a rumor. It's not just speculation. The advertisers were calling and saying, this is bad for my business. I do not want to be associated with this. They know that when they're advertising, they also need the other half of the country to buy their products. And they've seen what we have done to Bud Light, to Target, to Cracker Barrel. They saw how good we treated American Eagle, right? When the left went after American Eagle, the right was like, let's go shopping at American Eagle. They understand that we have buying power, and they don't necessarily need to please us all the time, but they do need to not crap on us. So that is a really, really important part of what happened here. A lot of this is just business. All right. Hollywood Reporter continues. Disney wanted Kimmel to address the situation in a way that would take down the temperature. But what he had planned was going to fan the flames with the MAGA base, the source says. So he was going to come in and double down and tell us to pound our opinions. I mean, who does he think he is? Like, you just get to walk around insulting half the country on network television all the time. I mean, the problem is that over the last several years, the media, the news, the movies, they have been able to do that without any sort of consequences whatsoever. It's like a child who's never been told no, and then you tell them no for the first time, and they lose their ever-loving minds because they don't know how to cope with not getting their way. I'm sorry, Jimmy. It's time somebody told you that you're wrong in your approach. Talks between Kimmel and Disney/ABC hit enough of a stalemate that executives there decided Wednesday's episode of Jimmy Kimmel Live had run out of time to be salvaged. The show's live to tape time was not far off. This is fun. The studio audience was lined up outside, but had not yet been brought in. So it tapes at 4 p.m. local time in California. So people are literally standing outside waiting to get brought into the studio audience for this exciting show. And they all got sent home. And so did Jimmy. By this point, 66 of the roughly 200 affiliate stations had said they wouldn't carry the episode. That's when ABC announced it was suspending the program. So first, Nexstar nixed Jimmy and said, we're not airing this. Then Sinclair said, we're not airing this at our TV stations. And then the network ABC said, you know what? We're benching this whole show. Like, forget it. We're taking a break until we figure all this out. So that's what went on all in the afternoon, according to the Hollywood Reporter. Then, now it's like almost 6:30 p.m. This was the earliest breaking news I could find on Nexstar's statement. Now, Nexstar, according to their website, owns America's largest local television broadcasting group. They've got more than 200 owned or partner stations in 116 U.S. markets, reaching 220 million people. They are massive. They are massive. And I called them to see if I could get an exact time on when they put this statement out, but I haven't heard back. And frankly, I doubt I will, but we'll see. I'll let you know if I do. Because the reason the timing matters on when they put this statement out is because the left and a lot of people are saying that Brendan Carr's statement, we can do this the easy way or the hard way, was what drove them to cancel Kimmel on their TV stations and what drove them to this decision. And I would like to know what the timing is on that, because you have to take into consideration that they were probably talking about this already all day on Tuesday. Now, when you're talking about how to handle a controversy, you're bringing in the lawyers, you're bringing in the money guys, you're bringing in the board of directors on a company of that size. You're going through contracts. You're looking at FCC law and saying, did we break any laws, or do we just have ethical obligations to cancel this show now, and so on and so on. So under no circumstances would this have been a really snap decision. But, so say Carr said this at 11:30 a.m. Like, if this statement came out in the earlier mid-afternoon, I'm not sure how much influence Carr had on that. I have a feeling that advertisers calling and saying, I'm going to pull my multi-million-dollar deal would have had a lot more influence than Brendan Carr's little comment on Benny Johnson's show. But maybe I'm wrong, right? I'm going to entertain it just for the hell of it. But Nexstar says Mr. Kimmel's comments about the death of Mr. Kirk are offensive and insensitive at a critical time in our national political discourse, and we do not believe they reflect the spectrum of opinions, views, or values of the local communities in which we are located. You think? Continuing to give Mr. Kimmel a broadcast platform in the communities we serve is simply not in the public interest at the current time, and we have made the difficult decision to preempt his show in an effort to let cooler heads prevail as we move toward the resumption of respectful, constructive dialogue. That was not a decision that was made lightly. And that wasn't a decision that was just made because Brendan Carr made that comment. There is no way that massive decision came from that small comment. A little while later, 6:49 p.m., Sinclair Media, the other biggie in the TV station market, they said they're dropping notice. They're dropping Kimmel until further notice in all of their 30 markets. And then just a few minutes later, Brendan Carr, head of the FCC, said another thing. He tweeted, I want to thank Nexstar for doing the right thing. Local broadcasters have an obligation to serve the public interest. While this may be an unprecedented decision, it's important for broadcasters to push back on Disney programming that they determine falls short of community values. I hope that other broadcasters follow Nexstar's lead. Yeah, I'm sorry. Jokes about murder of an innocent man who you disagreed with. Like, how far have we fallen as a society that this is where we are? Just ice cold poison in Jimmy Kimmel's veins and all of his writers to be able to put something like that out. And then I just want to go off for a second on the fact that Disney owns ABC. And if Walt Disney, if they ever unfreeze the guy and he finds out that his name is associated with somebody making murder jokes, I have a feeling he would be appalled. Disney owns a lot of trash these days, a lot of trash. And Disney needs to suffer. Oh, another fun side note, though, because of the cancellation, all the left is posting all over I'm canceling my Disney Plus subscription and I'm canceling Disney. I'm boycotting Disney. I'm like, yes, I've been asking everybody to do that for years. You're doing my work for me. Good job, Lefty. I really appreciate that. Anyway, 8:27 p.m. on Wednesday, September 17th, we're still there. Sinclair Media says that on all of their stations during the Friday night slot of what would have been Jimmy Kimmel's show, they are going to be airing a special show of remembrance, a special tribute to Charlie Kirk. So that's really got to be making Jimmy Kimmel mad. I mean, I just can't even imagine being around him right now because I don't know. He's pretty full of himself. So to have lost his show and then to know that his time slot is being taken up by the murder of somebody that he believes or appears to believe, I should say, to be fair, appears to believe, had it coming. That's really got to be getting his panties all in a wad. And then a little while later, 8:38 p.m., Sinclair made another statement. Man, they were just going off Sinclair. It was like tweet, tweet, tweet. First of all, they were demanding an apology from Kimmel. They were demanding that Kimmel make a substantial donation to the Kirk family, which is never going to happen. I don't think the apology will ever happen either. They were requesting further FCC investigation into the matter, which, again, that's coming from the corporate side, asking the FCC to get further involved, not the other way around. And they were demanding further assurances from ABC that they would have robust conversations about professionalism and accountability in all their programming. So Sinclair and Nexstar both had a lot to say about this. So far, none of this screams government interference to me. I loathe the government. It's too big. It's too in our stuff at the local level, right up to the federal level. They just have way too much influence in our lives. It wasn't like this when I was growing up. It's gotten so bad over the last 40, 50 years. I don't trust them. I don't care who's in charge. And it takes a lot for me to say something like what I just said, that none of this screams of government interference to me. It just doesn't. A little while later, last thing that happened that evening was that ABC themselves said, we're dropping Kimmel indefinitely. So they would have had the option of, there were still a few stations that were around the country that were willing to play the Kimmel show. And ABC realized between the advertiser pressure, between the social pressure, the public outcry, they realized they had to pull the show for now. A man was murdered in front of his wife and babies. Yeah, they did the right thing there. Did the full day of conversation about the FCC play a part? I mean, maybe a little bit, but all the other things have far more weight, in my opinion. I'm just going to take a second here, put on my glasses, and see what you guys are saying in the comments. Kimmel will probably move his show on YouTube and elsewhere. Yeah, Kimmel's going to be fine. I mean, he's had a setback. Jimmy Kimmel, they're crying, oh, how could you do this to Jimmy? There were actually protests around the country for Jimmy Kimmel. Like, Jimmy Kimmel is at home with his wife and kids tonight. And they're more upset about that than Charlie Kirk, who's never going to see his family again. Well, maybe Kimmel should have thought before he was completely insensitive to that fact, that Charlie's family is never going to see him again, that his children are going to grow up without a father. Yeah, Kimmel's going to be fine. Fine. Let's see. People say that the government tried to force to fire Kimmel. I've already covered that, right? About whether or not, and when I said Jimmy Kimmel seemed to miss the memo that the MAGA, the kid in the MAGA shirt part was photoshopped. He said he got the memo. He was just told to stick to the narrative that it was MAGA. Yeah, told to stick to the narrative, or just chose to, right? He doesn't really seem to have any problem saying things that aren't true or things that are grotesque. So the sun goes down. ABC dumps Kimmel. Next day is Thursday, September 18th. The sun comes up again. And Brendan Carr, FCC chief, is again on a podcast. And this time he is saying that he never talked to ABC, Nexstar, or Sinclair, or any of the affiliates. So here's this.
And so you've never called ABC. I don't even think you can legally. You never called ABC. You never called Sinclair. You never called Nexstar. You never said you got to get rid of Jimmy Kimmel, or the FCC is going to come down on you and look at your licenses, Sinclair, or look at your licenses, Nexstar. That never happened.
No, we never told anybody that they had to get rid of Kimmel. Frankly, I was surprised to see that Disney took that step. I was pleased when I saw Nexstar do it, when Sinclair did it. When I saw the news of Kimmel getting suspended by Disney, at first I thought maybe people were just misreporting on the Nexstar piece of it. And so we'll see where it goes from here.
Yeah. So Nexstar and Sinclair also said that they hadn't gotten calls from them. So the FCC was not pressuring them. They just actually, in a rare, refreshing change for corporate America, did the right thing and said, we're not playing with this clown anymore after what he said. We've had enough. That's a wonderful thing. I do not believe that there was government interference here. I'm not convinced. Now, the interesting thing, though, this is where it gets a little bit weird, where you're going to hear conspiracy theories that this is about government interference. Nexstar is in the middle of purchasing another broadcaster called Tegna. Now, Sinclair also recently offered to merge with Tegna. So if you had Nexstar, Tegna, and Sinclair coming together, there'd be like a mini powerhouse. And they are going to want to get in good with the FCC in order to get their merger approved. That's understandable. Of course, you want to get, if you're trying to make a business deal, you want to get all your ducks in a row so that you can make things as smooth as possible for whatever transition you're trying to make. So maybe there is a little bit of, governmental butt kissing here. That's a theory. But again, I really do believe that America has had enough of the evil things that the left has said over the past week and a half. And we're overwhelmed with the grotesque, ghoulish morbidness of people who are celebrating somebody's death and disregarding it as unimportant. So, comparing it to like everything else. And what about this? And what about that? What about this? What about that? Stop with the whataboutism. Stop with the whataboutism. We had to watch you, build altars to George Floyd, who was a career criminal and drug addict who once during a house robbery held a gun to a pregnant woman's stomach, and because that just stands out in my head. So we had to listen to that. Sorry, you got to choke on our Charlie Kirk morning for a while. It's going to be a while too. So get used to it and stop acting like this, and you'll stop having such hideous consequences. Anyway, the big dilemma again, to go back to where we started, is this government shutting down free speech, or is it free market actions in place here? And I still argue that it's free market forces. And I think that's where I'm going to land. But I would keep a close eye on the FCC, see what they do next. Just, let's give the Democrats with their conspiracy theory on this one, give them some credit. We should be watching the government. We should always have an eye on the government. I do not want ever to even sniff First Amendment violations again after what happened under the Biden administration. People who were canceled, doctors, big accounts, the president canceled for asking questions about politics, canceled for asking questions about election integrity, asking questions about science. Is this new shot good? Is it safe? It seems like everybody's fine around me. Why are we all locked up? This doesn't make sense. Does the science make sense? And we found out later that even the 6-foot distance thing was BS. But if at the time you asked a question about it, you would have been canceled on Facebook and had your account shut down. So we have dealt with so much censorship, and that's just the beginning. Like, I could go on about, we could do a whole show just on Biden era censorship. So I don't ever want to see anything like that again. So I'll keep an eye on the government, watch what the FCC does next. Let's stay suspicious when it comes to the government, even when we agree with what they're doing. It's probably the most important thing I said tonight. What I think is the most important thing that I hope you heard. Jimmy is still free to speak. He's just not free of consequences of his speech. Like, a lot of us have been fired for things we said at work. I mean, it happens every day. People get fired for things they say at work. Welcome to the real world, Jimmy. This is what happens when everybody agrees with you all the time and no one ever tells you that you're wrong. Oh, Jimmy, what can I get you? Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You're right. Oh, you're the greatest. You're so good. You're so good. You're so wonderful. No, you need somebody in your life who's going to look at you and be like, you know what? You're kind of acting like a jerk today. You're wrong about this. You're not being good. You're not being kind. That's what happens, though, with celebrities. People just lay and worship them, and they're afraid, and they tiptoe around them, and they just serve them and make sure their latte is just perfect so they don't have a temper tantrum. Then when you finally give them some consequences, it's the end of the world. That's what's happening here, and that's what we're seeing. So just in summary, public backlash started this cancellation process. Advertisers hate public backlash, okay? Ratings were down. Oh, I almost forgot to show you this beauty. Just gives you a visual here of what it looks like to be Jimmy Kimmel. That on the left there, you're looking at around 2010, and then he has a little bit of a lift, and then it goes all the way down right up to now 2025. His ratings have been tanking for years. When ratings tank, revenue tanks, and I'm sure Jimmy's still asking for big money. So ratings being down, this was probably an out for ABC. Probably like, we've been trying to figure out how to get out of this guy's contract for a long time. We've been trying to figure out how to get something better on the air that will actually make us some money. Bingo. He finally said something that was so horrible, we can just take him down. There's got to be an element of that in there. Sorry. Business is business. Nexstar and Sinclair, by all accounts, by their accounts, what they have said and what Brendan Carr has said, they acted alone in their decision making and without FCC influence. Again, by the time ABC canceled Kimmel at the end of the night on Wednesday, they may have taken the FCC Brendan Carr's comments into consideration, but I don't have any problem with that. If they took it into consideration, like, man, do we need trouble? Do we need trouble? We got a lot of shows here. We got a lot at stake. Do we really need to be getting into a war with the FCC? I'm sure that it was at least brought up. I'd be lying if I said I didn't think that, but I still think that the public outcry, the affiliates walking away, the advertiser pressure, I think that had more to do with it than anything. And Carr's comments were not the driver here. And finally, Jimmy actually didn't violate at least one piece of the FCC law. So that I looked into, and there's volumes. So forgive me if I didn't get too deep onto FCC law. But I want to talk about broadcast hoaxes. You're not allowed to run a hoax. So no licensee or permittee of any broadcast station shall broadcast false information concerning a crime or catastrophe if broadcast of the information does in fact directly cause substantial public harm. Now, he obviously said something that was false about a crime. Definitely accusing, half the country of trying to cover up that this kid was MAGA when he wasn't. I mean, it was a flat out lie, all of it. So the thing is, did his lie cause substantial public harm? Now, you could say it defamed everybody on the right. It defamed conservatives and it made us look bad. But it really doesn't measure up to what is substantial public harm per the definition that's provided within the law. And that is, for purposes of this rule, public harm must begin immediately. That didn't happen. And cause direct and actual damage to property or to the health or safety of the general public. None of that happened. Or diversion of law enforcement or other public health and safety authorities from their duties. None of that happened. The public harm will be deemed foreseeable if the licensee could expect with a significant degree of certainty that public harm would occur. No. A crime is any act or omission that makes the offender subject to criminal punishment by law. So the crime part fit. So there really was no harm done to us other than, some reputational harm, but that doesn't really fall into this category here. Could everybody, sue Jimmy Kimmel for defamation? I really don't think so, because in that case, you also have to prove that there were damages to your life. We can't have like a class action MAGA suit against Jimmy Kimmel. I don't need my 23 cents share of that. There's like 90 million of us. We don't, we're not really getting enough out of that. So let's leave that one alone. Are there other tools that the FCC could use in order to, fine or punish or remove a show? Yeah, maybe. But the easy way or hard way quote by Brendan Carr, I got to say was not the crux of the whole interview. It was just that one line that the press has run with. He really didn't talk about, specific statutes where he said, we could go after them for this. Like, he wasn't even thinking in those terms. He wasn't speaking in those terms. He was speaking in generalities, and I recommend you watch it. So in the end, I have a feeling this is going to play out in the courts, right? Kimmel's going to sue. His lawyers are probably working overtime right now, being screamed at by him 24 hours a day. I'm just assuming that's how Jimmy is, because anybody that can make fun of the things that he makes fun of. It just doesn't seem like a lighthearted, jovial fella to me who would be easygoing about anything. maybe, just maybe, he will act like an adult and apologize. No, I don't know. Do you see that happening? Let me know in the comments, because I don't see that happen. But, he could be more careful in the future. And if he apologized, he might get a little smidge of his reputation back with the right. Although I don't really think we're ever going to take him back anyway. I mean, so maybe he might as well just stand his ground on this one, because we don't want you no matter what you do. I don't know. I just hope that for anyone out there who has a platform, or even if you don't have a platform and you're just dealing with people, you're talking social media in real life, like always tell the truth. Always think before speaking. And if you're not sure of something, do a little bit of research, because all these extra things I learned today really did, help me to reconsider at least the other side's perspective a little bit more. I could see why, when they're all upset, they could say that the FCC, that comment was inflammatory. But when you take those comments on the whole, when you look at the picture of the context of all the other pressures that were going around the TV stations and the network, with public outcry, with advertising revenue on the line, those pressures really make the FCC thing look a little bit smaller. But you got to, try to look at things from another person's perspective. So think before you argue. Let's try to operate with some compassion and decency above all. And I am talking to myself as much as anyone else, because again, I started this with there's no way it's a First Amendment violation, and there's no way the government's putting pressure. And, I had to slow down and take a look and at least try to consider. So we're human beings. It is not easy. This is not going to get any easier. Horrible things are going to keep happening. And I feel like they are going to be happening in increasing intensity and frequency and speed. So brace yourself, my friends, because at some point you're going to have to look at those people you fight with on Facebook or Twitter or wherever and walk away from the fight. There's only so much, that you can do by arguing. And I try to remember myself when there's a leftist who's just being unreasonable. I love having conversations with people who are, willing to have a real exchange of ideas. That doesn't really happen that often. That's 1 in 100 conversations with somebody who disagrees. So the other 99 who just refuse to be moved, and they're not really intelligent. They're just throwing out talking points and whataboutisms and all that. In my mind, I look at them and I think there's a chain link fence, and they are a dog on a chain barking at me as I walk by. And when they're like, blah, 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 what about this? And what about this? And you voted for a felon, and all the things that they say that are just so regurgitated talking points. I just see a dog, a crazed dog barking behind a chain link fence. And it makes it so much easier for me to just smile and wave and keep walking and not stop and engage. And feel free to use the barking dog tool yourself. It's actually really fun. It makes it more fun. Makes it easier, makes life easier in this crazy, crazy, crazy time we're living in. All right. I have talked enough. I thank you so much for coming tonight. I, as always, have had a lot of fun. Hope you guys are doing well. Have a great weekend. God bless you, and God bless America.